What's going on, everybody? Welcome to the Pineda Show, where we talk all things money, real estate, and entrepreneurship. And in today's episode, I'm going to teach you how to hire your very first employee. So even though this video is about how to hire your first employee, it literally applies to every employee you hire thereafter. I can make a separate video about every step of the hiring process because it is very in-depth. But in this video, I want to go over briefly all the different steps so that you have an idea of what to do. And if you want me to make other videos on each step in depth, do me a big favor, go hit that like button and comment below so that I know this video has a lot of traction, people want to hear it and learn how to do it. So when looking at hiring your first employee, there are really three different questions you've got to answer. How do you know it's time? Where do you find them? And what exactly are you looking for? So let's talk about the first question of how do you know when it's time? There are a few different signs that'll tell you it's time to hire your first employee. For me, the very first one is when I start to feel overwhelmed. If I'm feeling overwhelmed, that typically means that I'm working too much, I don't have any time to do anything. It means I don't really have margin in my life. And that is the easiest sign that you need to hire somebody. And think about the other side of it. If you don't have a lot of things to do and you're not feeling like that, you're trying to figure out what can I do, then that means you don't need an employee. You're still in the beginning stages of your business where it's not necessary. So being busy and feeling overwhelmed and stressed out are actually good things. People think it's bad and they try to avoid it, but it's a sign of your body telling you, hey, it's time to hire somebody. We need to grow. We've built our business to the point where we're getting enough leads, we're getting enough customers. These are all great things. So if you're feeling that way, congrats, that's awesome. Another sign that you might need to hire an employee is you've reached a ceiling. Maybe you've reached the ceiling due to being overwhelmed, or maybe you still have a lot of time, but there's just not much else you can do. You've reached the peak of your business. Now, if you've reached a ceiling because you don't have any more time and you're overwhelmed, we talked about that. You need to hire someone else. Maybe you're not feeling overwhelmed and maybe you're not even working that much. If that's the case, it means you're not marketing good enough or you're not having good enough sales. And so you need to figure out, where am I deficient? Am I just not a good marketer? Are we not generating enough interest in our company or our product? Or are we getting a lot of leads, we're getting a lot of interest, but I just can't close them and convince them to buy our product? You gotta have an honest conversation with yourself. And whichever one it is, then you need to go hire that person. Because what will happen is now you're gonna start converting all those leads into revenue, and then you're gonna start growing your company. So if you've reached a ceiling in your business, that is also a good indicator that you probably need to hire somebody. Another indicator is that you are doing jobs that you hate. To go back to marketing, maybe you're not good at making videos and making content for your business. You just hate being on camera, you hate trying to make advertisements, you hate doing all that stuff. You just wanna go run the business, whatever it may be, and do operations. That is a very obvious indicator that you need to hire somebody else who's talented in the areas that you are not. The reality is nobody's good at everything. As much as we'd all love to believe we're superhuman, especially as entrepreneurs, we can do anything, that's not the case. You've got to understand what your strengths and weaknesses are. I can tell you, for me, I'm very good at marketing and I'm very good at sales. What I'm not good at is attention to detail, processes, operations. I hate doing that stuff. For me, I just want to make content. That's marketing. And then I want to sell people on working with our companies. Once the people choose to work with us, I want somebody else to take care of them. I want them to service our clients because that's not my strength, it's their strength. Our companies will do far better when I'm out doing that and somebody else is out doing that. You cannot do everything and grow a big company. You have to sacrifice doing something. Typically, you want to just do the things you're the best at. So those are some indicators to look for that'll tell you it's time to start hiring an employee. So the next question you've got to answer is, okay, I know it's time, where do I find them? And there are a whole bunch of ways to find employees, but my number one favorite way is through my sphere of influence. Almost all of my employees are people I've already had a prior relationship with, or they know somebody that knows somebody. We've had many occasions where our employees had a friend who was looking for a job, they fit a role that we were looking for, and we ended up hiring them. For me, it's always gonna be easier working with people you already know. And I know that there are others who think the opposite. They don't like to mix friends and family with business. But personally, I just don't believe in that. My family works in my business. My friends work in my business. We've achieved a high level because of it. And that's just mainly due to trust. We both have mutual trust that we're gonna take care of each other. And that's something that you can't really find with somebody you don't know. They can prove their trust over time, but you just don't know until time has passed. So I would always look at your sphere of influence. I would look on social media. Every single time I have a job posting, I'll post it on social media. And we'll almost always get a good candidate from that post. post, because the people who respond to that have been following me, or maybe their friend tagged them and told them about me, and so they're already somewhat qualified versus the guy who has no idea about our companies. So I'd always look at your network first and foremost. The next way to find good employees is through LinkedIn and Indeed. Those are probably the two biggest job sites, and we've hired from there as well. We'll go in there and put a job ad out, and then we'll get candidates who apply. Now, as I said, that process is tough because you do not know them, and now you need to learn to hire them. And as I said before, I'm not gonna go over hiring in this video. That can be a whole separate video. It could be a whole series, in fact, because hiring is probably the hardest thing to do in business. A lot of companies get it wrong because it's really hard. If you get 200 candidates that apply for your job, how do you know which one to pick? It's hard to pick someone for the job if you get 200 people who apply, because you virtually know nothing about them other than a resume they send you. There is one other way to hire people. If you don't want to go through the hiring process yourself, you can actually hire a recruiter to do it for you. Personally, I've talked to recruiters, I've worked with them, but we've never hired anyone from a recruiter. But they're cool because they'll do the job process for you. They'll go find the candidates, interview them, and say, hey, this is the best applicant for what you want. And then you would have the final say of if you hired this person or not. Now, a recruiter isn't free. Typically, you're gonna pay them a commission on that person's salary. And the commissions can vary. It can be 10, 20%. So if you're trying to hire a position that's $50,000 and they charge 20%, you have to pay the recruiter $10,000. So it's not cheap. But if they get you the best employee, that person will pay for themselves easily. Most employers don't realize how much money they lose by hiring the wrong person. Not only do you pay that person for months before you get rid of them, hiring the wrong person is probably the most costly thing you can do as a business owner. So if you gotta pay extra to get the perfect person, that's worth it. All right, so that brings us to our third question we need to answer when hiring our first employee. And that question is, what exactly am I looking for in these candidates? And let me just say, when it comes to hiring, everything I've learned from my business coach. I had no idea how to hire, and we actually just started hiring people this way in 2020. But there are 4 things you need to look at when deciding what am I looking for in a candidate. And those 4 things are their personality, their experience, their desire, and then lastly, do they fit the core values of your company? Now, you might be saying, I don't have core values for my company, which many people who are trying to hire their first employee don't. So you first have to come up with core values. And maybe I'll do a video on that as well. If you want me to do a video, make sure you comment below and I'll do one on core values. I'll talk about ours and how we came up with them. But once you have your core values in place, you can then say, does this person fit my core values? If they don't, they are chopped off. I don't care how talented they are, because they need to fit my core values if they're gonna work at my company. What if a really good salesman applied, but he was shady, and your company does not want any shady people? Well, I don't care how good of a salesman he is, he's not working for me. That's where core values come into play, and they're so important. So assuming they fit your core values, you have to look at personality, experience, and desire. So personality is probably the biggest thing that I have learned about this year. There are people who are natural salespeople, there are people who are naturally analytical, there are people who are very detail-oriented, and if you put the wrong personality in the wrong role, they end up crashing. For instance, you cannot have an introverted salesperson. A salesperson needs to be extroverted, they need to be social, they need to be willing to meet people. But I see introverted people in sales roles all the time, and they just don't do that good. Now, you can change your personality and modify it so that you can do it, but I would rather take a natural in that role. And the same thing applies for, say, a bookkeeper. I don't want somebody like me as the bookkeeper. I don't pay any attention to detail. I don't want to be bogged down by all these little tiny numbers, but there are people who are detail-oriented who love that stuff, and they love balancing the books. So you need to find somebody whose personality fits the job role. The second thing we mentioned is they gotta have the experience in the role. You can hire somebody with no experience to do the role, but wouldn't somebody who's already done it be better? To talk about sales again, yes, I can go grab somebody I think will naturally be a good salesperson, but if I go and get somebody who's naturally a good salesperson who's been selling cars for 10 years, that person is way ahead of somebody who's never been in a sales job before. So experience plays a big role, and that's honestly what your resume is for, just to say, here's my experience, but that's all employers usually focus on. It's hard to judge somebody's personality just from an interview. There are many different personality tests out there, like the DISC test or predictive index. Personally, we use predictive index. It's really expensive, but you guys can go get some budget ones that are gonna help you figure out these personalities. The last piece you need to look at is desire. How bad do they actually want the job? There are people who just take a job to get a paycheck. They don't really want it. And I'm sure a lot of you watching this might be those people. And those people tend to not last. They tend not to work the hardest because they're not passionate about what they do. So I always want to hire people that are really passionate, They want the job, they want the position, they're fulfilled by it. Those are the people I want. And when you're looking through a resume, if somebody is just switching job to job, probably means they don't know what they want, or they're just not a good employee. But if you can see I'm passionate about business and real estate on this video, you could probably see if somebody's just trying to make a paycheck or they're really passionate about your company. So when hiring, you gotta look at all of those things when making a decision on who you're finally gonna take. And if you stayed with me till now, you can see the process of hiring is not easy. And as I said when we started the video, I could talk about each one just in depth on its own separate video. And if you want me to do that, make sure you comment below which one is most interesting to you. Is it the actual process of going on the job sites, creating the ad, and then interviewing candidates? Is it figuring out personally what kind of position or person do I need to hire? Or is it with judging whether this person is a good fit or not? There's a lot to take in, but I really hope that this video gives you an idea of how to hire properly. Doesn't matter if it's your first employee or any other employee, the process is always the same. And do me a big favor, if you like this video, go and hit that like button. If you haven't already, make sure you hit the subscribe button. Go follow me on all my socials. And until next time, take care.